Okay, welcome back. This is part 2 of the week 5 lecture, and as promised, I will keep it short, but let me just talk about two things here. Number one, the detailed record. So if you guys go into the week 5 module, I just recently posted a new document. It's a screenshot that I took of the detailed record of just a random article that I found using EBSCO, the major database that Eric Walsh, the GBC librarian, talked about last week. So we don't need to know all the different databases that we have access to through the GBC library. As Eric said, EBSCO is all that most students really need. Now, he also showed you guys how to use issues and controversies and films on demand. And I do strongly encourage that you use films on demand. It's just like YouTube. You can search for videos and you can use videos as a source. I didn't mention that in my previous list, but documentaries and news programs are valid sources. They work a lot like articles or books. So films on demand is a good place to look for stuff, and issues and controversies can be helpful when you're first learning about your topic. This is another way to educate yourself because a lot of the things you find in that database will give you kind of both sides of a current issue or a big topic. So those are good, but EBSCO is kind of a one-stop shop, and you can find most of the articles and other sources that you need just using EBSCO. So I went on to EBSCO a couple of days ago. I did a basic search like Eric did for global warming and climate change, and I just found one of the first articles that popped up in my search results, and I clicked on it. When you click on an article that shows up in your search results in EBSCO or in another database, it's going to take you to what we call the detailed record. The first page that you go to after clicking on the article is the detailed record. So when you open up the file that I uploaded recently, you're going to see the detailed record of this article that I found. The reason I'm showing this to you guys is because I really want you to pay attention to the detailed records of the articles that you are looking at. And I always tell students you need to look at the detailed record before you fully commit to actually using the article, because there's a lot of valuable information in that detailed record that will help you to decide if the article is actually going to be useful for you. So as you'll see in my screenshot, and you can even open it up right now if you want as I'm talking, you'll see basically everything that you need. The author, the name of the author of the article will be there. The name of the publication where the article was first published will also be there, and you need to know that. Obviously, the title of the article will be there, but you'll also notice an abstract, that brief summary of the article that you need to read before you decide whether or not you're actually going to use the article. Take a look at that abstract. It's going to be short. You can read it in just a couple of minutes, and it will give you a really good, concise overview of what the article is going to be about. So after reading the abstract, you might say, okay, this sounds interesting, this sounds relevant, and I'm going to check it out. Or you might decide, you know what, it doesn't sound really like something that I could use, so I'm going to move on. And click the back button, go back to your search results, and take a look at a different article. But if you like the sound of the abstract, you can go ahead and download a PDF or an HTML, assuming that we have full text access, and we often do. So underneath the words detailed record, you're going to see what kinds of file types are available for you. So often it will be PDF or HTML, or maybe just one or the other. But you can go ahead and download the file or save it to a disk, do whatever you want, but it's just really important that you guys pay attention to the detailed record. And on the other side of the page, on the right-hand side, you'll see a toolbar where you also have options. You can save, you can print. You guys have to get organized when you research. It's one of the most important parts of research. You have to get organized, and you need to hang on to the sources that you actually want to use. I see this happen every semester. Students lose sources. Students will find good sources, and then somehow they will misplace them. They will forget to save them. They will forget to download them. So they might read a source, take a few notes, and say, okay, that's good. I want to use that source. But then they misplace it, or they never save it, or they might think, I can find it again later. It's no big deal. I'm going to move on and look at other stuff. And then weeks later or months later, they need that source again, and they can't find it. And because they didn't look at the detailed record, they don't remember the name of the author. They don't remember the name of the title. They don't remember the name of the publication where that article first appeared. So they're having trouble finding it again. I see this literally every single semester. You might laugh and say, oh, that's not going to happen to me, but it always happens to somebody. And I'm sure nobody plans to do that. Nobody wants to do that, but it always happens to someone. At least one student per semester. Normally it's more than one. So don't let that be you. Okay, get organized. I recommend starting a folder where you can put all of the sources that you find in 102. Okay, you need to have a place to put all of these articles or books, because as we continue to research, we're going to end up eventually with 8 sources that we are going to use on the research paper. So that's a lot. That's a lot of information. You need to keep all of those sources in the same place. So don't just breeze right past the detailed record. I see a lot of students do that. They see a title on the search results that might look good, and they immediately just want to save the PDF or download it, but they're not thinking very much about where they're putting it. They're not even 100% sure that they're going to use this source. They're just like, okay, yeah, great, I'll get the PDF, okay. Or, like I said, sometimes they just read it, but they don't save it. They don't actually acquire the source. You need to be possessive. You need to possess these sources. They need to belong to you. They need to be in a folder, on a disk, in your cloud, or if you're old school like me, you might even want to print them out. Whatever you want, but please be organized. So again, check out the detailed record, just that document that I've uploaded, that I posted to the week 5 module, just so you know what it looks like. So you know, once you click on an article, okay, now I'm in the detailed record. Here's all the information that I need. So remember, the articles that we find in the library databases were originally published somewhere else. They were originally published in a newspaper, in a magazine, or in an academic journal, or maybe even in a book. So you're responsible for knowing where that source originally appeared, and the detailed record will always tell you that. And a lot of students will end up not knowing that because they didn't look at the detailed record. So just remember, EBSCO is the name of the database. It's not the name of a journal. It's not the name of a magazine. Articles were not published originally in EBSCO. EBSCO is a collection. It's like an archive, okay? That's where stuff is gathered. But all of that stuff appeared somewhere else originally. So when you're writing your works cited citations for these sources, you have to know the name of the magazine or the name of the newspaper, the name of the academic journal where they first appeared. Okay, and again, the detailed record will tell you that along with the author's name. It will also show you that abstract, and it will give you an opportunity to save or download or print the actual article. Okay, so it's just really important that you guys know what the detailed record is and you take a few minutes to look at it. Because again, part of research is making choices. You're not going to grab every source that shows up in your search results. You're not even going to use every source that you end up reading or checking out. Don't get frustrated by that. That's just the nature of research, okay? Sometimes you start reading something and you're like, yeah, I don't want this. Or maybe you read it, you like it, you find it interesting, but it just doesn't really fit into your research paper. It just doesn't really tie in directly to your argument. So you don't use it. But a lot of times we can make our decisions about what we want and what we don't want based on the abstract. So please read the abstracts of these sources before you commit to using the sources. That's just a really important bit of advice. Okay, so that's enough about that. If you have any questions, let me know. Now, let me just say a few things about the bibliography assignment. So we've already talked about annotations, and we worked on annotating as readers. Back at the beginning of the semester, we were reading articles, and I told you guys to annotate, to write down notes as you read. Well, now we're using the word annotations in a slightly different way. We're still writing things, but now we're not just talking about the notes that you take while you read. We're talking about a sort of more detailed, elaborate version of a works cited page. So we're all familiar with what a works cited page looks like, and we will eventually have these for our research papers. But what we're doing right now is part works cited page and part summary and evaluation. So if you go into the week 5 overview, I basically tell you the 3 major components of the annotated bibliography. So step 1 is to provide a complete and correct works cited style citation for each of the 4 sources that you include in this first half of the bibliography. So we all know what a works cited page is. I hope we've all done them before. You probably had to do them in 101. So we get that basic concept. But remember, there are 2 levels of MLA citation, and we use MLA in this class. That is our citation style. We typically use MLA in English classes, but of course there are other citation styles. APA, Chicago, those are used by other disciplines. In English, we use MLA. So remember that. And there are 2 levels of MLA citation rules. There are in-text citations. Those are short citations usually found in parentheses, so we also call them parenthetical citations, and they appear in the body of your paper. And then at the end of the paper, we have the works cited page where we have the longer, more complete citations for those same sources that you cited in the body of your paper. Okay, so you're going to have complete citations for all 4 of your sources. Again, these need to be complete and correct. So if you look in the week 5 module, you'll see another document that I've posted. It's basically an example of what an annotated bibliography should look like. So look at page 1 of that document. That's how you're going to format each of your entries. So you'll see a complete citation for a source, okay? And underneath that, I have a paragraph. A short paragraph written by me that consists of 2 things: a summary, a brief summary of that source, and then an evaluation of that source. So you're doing 2 things in your annotation. So first you have your citation, and then underneath it you have your annotation. And in this case, the annotation will consist of both the summary and the evaluation. So we know what a summary is. You're basically providing an abstract. You're providing a brief overview of what this source is about. And then underneath that, you're going to have a brief evaluation where you tell us why you think this source is reliable. And then very briefly, you can also tell us how you're planning on using the source. Because of course it's great to find a good source, but it's only helpful for you if it's actually going to tie into your argument. in your research project, your research paper. So I don't just want to know that it's a good source. I want to know that it's a good source for you. And again, we don't have our arguments completely worked out just yet. So it's fine if you're kind of general when you're doing the evaluation. I think, you can say things like I think or I expect this to help me for the following reason, because things will change. And I always see that. Some of the sources that we find at this early stage, we don't end up sticking with them. But it's good if we can, and it's good to at least start thinking about what you're going to do and how these sources might help you to accomplish it. So you'll have a 2 to 3 sentence summary followed by a 2 to 3 sentence evaluation. And those numbers do matter. I am a bit of a stickler when it comes to the total number of sentences in your annotations. So let's do some simple math, and we'll see that at minimum, each of your annotations needs to be at least 4 sentences long. That would be 2 sentences for the summary and then 2 sentences for the evaluation. So that's the minimum. You can go a little bit beyond that, but 4 sentences per annotation, that is the bare minimum. All right. So again, look at my example. And then if you go to page 2 of that document, the bib example document, you'll see just a bunch of different kinds of works cited citations. I don't have annotations on page 2. I just have different kinds of works cited citations for different kinds of sources. Okay, so that's designed to help you guys if you need to look at examples of other kinds of sources that you might be working with. So I will also provide some more links and resources to help you guys with citation rules, because frankly, it's kind of hard to do this in an online class. I've taught 102 online before, but this is the biggest challenge, this part of the unit, this part of the class, tackling citation rules. I like to do this in kind of a more hands-on, live environment, just because it can be difficult. But what you guys need to understand is that we don't expect you to memorize citation rules. We don't. What we expect is that you guys will find appropriate examples, and then you will follow the examples when creating your own citations. So for example, if you are working with an academic journal article and you need to write a complete citation for it, you need to find examples of what academic journal articles look like on a works cited page, and then make sure that your citation looks like these examples. So again, the example I provided on page 1 of that bib example document is an academic journal article. It comes from the Clinical Social Work Journal, or whatever it's called. So that's an example of how an academic journal article is going to be cited. But if you have a newspaper article or a magazine article, it's going to look a little different. A book will look a little different. So will a website. So I have examples of websites, books, newspaper, and magazine articles on page 2 of that same document. So that might be helpful. I'm also going to link you guys to the Purdue OWL website, which has a great MLA citation rules section that you can go and look at and use. So again, citation rules change over time. We are currently in the 8th edition of MLA citation rules, because we have to constantly update these rules as technology advances, as the nature of research changes. So I always tell students it's not worth your while to memorize this stuff because it changes. Instead, you just need to know where to look. If you can find appropriate examples, just let those examples guide you and structure your citations just like the examples. And I will always provide examples, and I will also give you websites that have examples. So I'll try to help as much as I can, but you guys need to take responsibility for your citations. You need to get it right. Okay, in 101 and in lower levels, I have a lot of students who just never really bothered to learn how to format their MLA citations. They just give me URLs or they just make up their own citation style that's not a real thing. And that's a problem at those lower levels, but it's not a huge problem because research isn't a huge part of those lower level classes. But 102 is different. Research is a huge part of 102. So I'm just going to say this. If you guys don't learn how to, format your citations properly, you're going to be in for a world of hurt over the course of this semester. You're going to lose massive points because citations matter now. Okay? Getting them right matters. And it really is your responsibility. I can't do it for you. I don't know your sources. I can't cite your sources for you. You guys have to take some responsibility. But look at my example. Again, there are some basic units of information that you're always going to be responsible for, no matter what type of citation you're writing, no matter what type of source you're using. So if you look at my example, you'll see that I start with the author's name, last name first. Okay, so anytime you have an author, you start with the author's name. Then you have the title of the source, okay? And typically periodical articles, anything from a magazine, a newspaper, or a journal, the titles for those will go in quotation marks. Book titles will be italicized. So you might want to remember that. After the title, we have the name of the original publication where the source originally appeared. So this will be true of any kind of article, whether you find it on a website, a newspaper, a magazine, or an academic journal. And the titles of newspapers, magazines, and journals also get italicized, as you can see in my example. After the name of the publication, we're going to have additional publication info. That means the date of publication, that means page numbers, and if we're working with an academic journal, that's also going to mean volume and number. So you'll see my abbreviations, volume and number, right after the name of the journal. So academic journals have volumes and numbers. Magazines and newspapers typically don't. Okay, so if you're dealing with a newspaper article, you're not going to have to worry about volume, but you're still going to have page numbers, and you're still going to have the date of publication. But of course, newspapers come out every day. Most magazines come out once a week or maybe once a month, whereas academic journals typically only come out maybe like twice a year. So the dates will be different depending on what kind of periodical it is. So in my example, it's like summer of or spring of 2015. So that's typical of an academic journal. But a magazine date will be different. It'll be a particular week or a particular month, and a newspaper article will be a particular day. Okay, so just be aware of those differences. You're always going to have page numbers. And then if you found the article using a database, then you need to include the name of the database at the very end of your citation, just like I did. I used EBSCO, so you see EBSCO there at the end, and we always italicize the names of databases. So again, use my example, use the Purdue OWL, and I'll also link you to some other relevant examples as they come to mind. And if you have questions, let me know. But just understand this. If your citations are wrong in the bibliography, if you write good annotations, good summaries, good evaluations, great. But if you screw up your citations, and not just small mistakes like, oh, you didn't put the date in parentheses or whatever, you got the name, you put the name and first name first or whatever. Small mistakes, I get. Okay, we can live with small mistakes. But if your formatting is way off, I'm going to ask you to do it again. Okay, so we have to get the citations right. If you don't get them right the first time, I'm simply going to ask you to go back and do it again and again and again until you get it right. So you can save some time and hassle by simply getting them right the first time. But hey, don't hesitate to ask me questions. I don't mind helping you with citations. I really don't. They're not the most fun thing to work on. They're tedious. Yeah, for everybody. Nobody likes citations. They're not designed to be fun, okay? But they're part of our responsibility as advanced students. We have to get this stuff. But if you need help, I'm always here, okay? And I'm always happy to sit down with you and help you with an individual citation, or I can help find you an example of that type of citation that can help to guide you. All right, so just let me know if you have questions or problems. Remember to get the bibliography, the first half, consisting of 4 sources, and one of those sources must be an academic source from a peer-reviewed scholarly journal, or perhaps a scholarly book that you found through Google Scholar or through the library databases. Remember that requirement. Read the instructions for the bibliography assignment. And remember, there's no research journal this week, so we are only focused on the bibs. If you have questions, problems, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.